What is an open secret in your profession that we regular folk don't know or generally aren't allowed to be told about? The sheer magnitude of criminal cases that detectives have that will pretty much never even get looked at, much less investigated due to a massive lack of staffing. I hear the solve rate, closed cases, last year for homicides was only approximately 61% U.S., which sure sounds like a passable grade. But that does mean over one-third of murders go unsolved. That's a lot of murderers that might be walking around free out there. Makes you think we probably need more people working these cases. We don't actually know how general anesthesia works at the molecular level. There are theories but nothing concrete. Also, general anesthesia is quite safe contrary to popular belief. Compared to 30 to 40 years ago, mortality from anesthesia is now considered statistically undetectable. Really? Cool. Also terrifying. Also, I will never consent to general if it can be done with local. But not just because of this. This sounds like a Dr. Spaceman quote. We don't actually know where the human heart is. That shit fucks me up. I hope I never have to experience that again. The amount of salt and fat in your food, especially at high-quality restaurants. We kept a large hotel pan full of clarified butter behind the line. It'd be empty by the end of the night. I think it was Anthony Bourdain who said the secret that made all restaurant food taste so good was that absolutely everything was just saturated with butter. All hotels have had bed bugs at one point or another. High-end and low-end hotels. What separates the good hotels from the bad ones or how they handle bed bugs once they are discovered. But if you ask the front desk if they have ever had bed bugs, they will typically lie and say no, since most people don't understand how bed bug infestations happen. Very true. I've worked in a couple different hotels over the last 10 years. Mostly upscale. All have had bed bugs one time or another. Also, bed bugs are brought in by guests. Hotels do not just have them. Your luggage will typically pick them up when traveling. This is why you should not put your suitcase on your bed. You can also get them from movie theaters, bus seats, old furniture, etc. Flight attendant can confirm. They all have them. Good ones actually spray almost every room. Bad ones never spray. Went to Disney World and found bed bugs. Family complained to management and they upgraded our room and dry cleaned all of our luggage for us. Didn't get rid of the bed bugs, but the extra fast passes were nice. Dummy thermostats are pretty common. It basically works like a placebo where people feel more comfortable when they think they have control over the room temperature. It results in way fewer complaints, as are hidden temperature limits. The T-stat may allow you to turn it up 75 F on the display, but hidden in the programming its max set point is 68. Living in U.S. military barracks, I can confirm this. Every building I've lived in has fake thermostats. I quickly learned that the heat and cooling was ran on calendars regardless of temperatures, often blasting AC in the winter and heat in the summer. This makes more sense now. We have a boiler valve system, and the thermostat never worked in my apartment, nor was it responsive. But if you turn the valve on the pipes, hot water comes in full force. As a freelance ghostwriter, most of my clients are Russian or Middle Eastern men who publish 5 to 10 ghost-written romance or erotica books a week under female pen names. They spend $10K a month and double or triple that by flooding the market. At one point, one client told me he had 6 of the top 10 Regency romance spots on the paid best seller list. Serious question. How do they make money if they're paying you to write them? If you see 12 different sellers for an item on Amazon, in all likelihood the total number of sellers is probably 3 to 4, all of whom have multiple names selling the same item at different prices. Most people don't even know that real people sell on Amazon. Yeah, Amazon turned into eBay when nobody was looking. I am in IT. We don't always know why the fix worked and we don't care. I work as a hardware contractor for a fairly large insurance company, which means if someone's desk setup has something broken, I replace it and everyone's happy. We had one desk, though, that pulled the ship of Theseus on me. I had replaced every part I could, and it could no longer be considered the same setup. It still didn't work, but only for the person who sat there regularly. We told her she wasn't allowed to sit there anymore due to solar flares. The number of times I've put gremlins under cause of problem and/or fuck if I know under solution in a ticket without anyone ever batting an eye is appalling. And when you do, lying to users can easier than explaining the truth that they'll never understand anyway. Magic wink. Most hospitals are actually crazy trusting about who they release dead bodies to when people die. Oftentimes I show up with just a gurney and someone's name scribbled on a post-it note, and they just let me walk out with somebody's grandma without asking my name or getting ID or anything. So, like, do you work for a funeral home, just have a weird hobby, or what? I'm a furniture upholsterer, and the amount of times other professionals just recover the old fabric and filling drives me mental. If you're paying for reupholstery, ask for progress photos. Nobody needs all that nasty old fabric hidden underneath, and it's not fair to the client as they don't necessarily know any better. Nor should they have to. My mother was a furniture upholsterer, and she would unstitch and unstaple the old fabric, which became the patterns and template for the new fabric. This was meticulous, so I can imagine people cut corners. I worked as a retail manager in the past. A customer's attitude and approach is about 99% of the reason someone would help them solve the problem. Sale ended yesterday? Your return is past the date? You want a better price on a clearance item? Be a normal, kind person and you'll usually get your way. If you start off being shitty or demanding, then sorry, I can't help you. It's store policy. 1000% this. A customer was asking me all sorts of questions on the phone the other day, and I know they weren't the answers she wanted, but she laughed it off and was super nice about it. So I told her to email me directly and I'd give her an extra 5% off her next purchase for being so nice and reasonable. If you're rude to me, I will absolutely toe the company line and will not help you. 100%. I'm much more willing to bend the policy and help you in ways I can if you're nice to me and ask instead of demanding. Bartender here. If you're cool, I will absolutely bend over backwards to make sure your night goes amazing. That means extra stiff drinks, remakes if you don't like something, faster service, etc. You don't even have to tip that well. Just treat me like a human and maybe have a funny story to make my night go faster. If you're mean to me, you get exactly what you ordered and not a ml more. I am super polite. Joke with them. Treat them like real people. And I have never not gotten what I asked for. I got a $600 fee taken off a Verizon bill. Got $200 off and free delivery on a new $2,000 John Deere. It's not that I didn't pay for shipping. The manager put it on a trailer and drove it to my house. I got my wife the equivalent of 10 free drinks from Starbucks due to an issue with a $5 gift card, etc. People will go out of their way for you if you're simply not a piece of shit. People in customer service get shit on all day. Losing Karens as a customer is not an overall loss for the company. Ex-retail manager as well. I used to work in daycare. I have worked at several. I'm American. The law in Washington state was 14 toddlers to 2 staff. And most daycares try to run at the max amount, which provides a terribly stressful environment for children. Even if you enroll your kid in a daycare with less children to teacher ratio, the daycare is usually trying to raise it, and a couple less kids being there is temporary. State regulations can be bizarre and cause even less ratio of care. For example, every child must have their diaper changed every 2 hours or more all day and be documented. Multiply that by 14 kids. So changing all 14 diapers, potty training some every 2 hours for 8 to 10-hour days. The two-staff rule is really just one person watching the kids for most of the day while the other person is changing diapers. A good environment being provided is almost impossible when one person is watching 14 toddlers. The state taxes daycares for breaking any small rule, so they struggle to make money and pay people fairly, hire more staff. The same ratio applies in Ohio. It doesn't matter if the clients are mostly well-to-do and private paid or single parents on state assistance. Every place wants to get away with as many kids to as few teachers as possible. And you can bet as soon as that toddler room drops to 7 kids towards the end of the day, one of you is either going home or going to another room to send someone be home. Breaks are always given at nap times because they can legally have all 14 toddlers in there with one teacher if the kids are on their cots. You're also supposed to do sanitizing and lesson plans at nap times too. Never mind that there's always one kid that doesn't sleep and another one who is shitting their pants or puking. My sister worked at a corporate daycare and the things she told me are why I will never ever send my child to a place like that. Babies being left crying for hours. Employees being yelled at constantly by managers and then expected to put on smiling faces for kids. It's one of the most appalling industries out there. Find a small, private daycare for your kids. We found an amazing local woman to watch our kiddo. Background checks aren't that hard or expensive. You'll be glad you did. We know all the websites you're visiting and all the rounds of Minesweeper you are playing while you are at your desk. But as long as you aren't doing anything illegal, we don't care. Job, creepy guy with telescope peeping in office windows. And please don't look at porn on your work computer. For all you people at home, please disconnect from the VPN before you watch Netflix. I think the actual secret is that people still play Minesweeper. Oh, this was made absolutely clear to me. For context, I did a work experience in an office about a year ago. It was for a government department specializing in connecting utilities and roads of private developments, large sites where they build about 10 to 100 houses at a time, to the public sector. My entire job was basically copy-typing handwritten reports and scanning photos and plans to a shared server. My manager made it absolutely clear to me that I'm not expected to work too hard since I'm not being paid for 6 months of work. That didn't stop me from constantly going through folders of developments and getting things uploaded to the system, to the point where, when I left, I was said to be the best person they had from the work experience program. The thing is, I was constantly alt-tabbing through Reddit while on shift. Your dog or cat is much more comfortable when you are there with them during euthanasia. It's really hard when people say, "It's too hard for me to be here with him," and leave the room for it. It is one of the hardest things ever. But they need you there with them. They look around for you sometimes. That being said, if we do the euthanasia without you, we always have one staff member whose only job during the procedure is to cuddle and comfort your pet and tell them how much their owner loves them, and what a good boy they are. I just realized what my brother means when it's his job to cuddle the dogs at his work. Absolutely breaks my heart knowing he has to do that for them. 100%. It's incredibly hard as an owner to be there for it, but you are that animal's whole world, and I would not to dream of letting them pass without being there for them. That is our final duty as an animal parent. This made me so sad to read. I couldn't imagine my dogs wondering where I went in their last moments, disappointed. I can't imagine not being there when my pet is put down. I have always been there cuddling my pets when we've had to let them go. I stay until the very end. I feel like it's the least I can do given that I am making the decision about whether they live or die that day. Our vets have always gently encouraged us to be there when we have had to put a pet down. They even let my dad hold our hamster while she was being euthanized. I mean, Who cares about a hamster? But we did. And so did they. Having my dog put to sleep was the second hardest thing I had to witness. But I'll be damned if the last thing he was going to see was someone else ugly crying. That reinforced glass and that security camera may not actually be unbreakable or being monitored or recorded, respectively. If you can see the monitor showing the camera feed, it doesn't actually mean it's being recorded, too. These things can just be there to make people guess whether it actually works or not. Go ahead, roll that dice. People typically just go somewhere where there isn't a camera or glass. Instead, really glad the glass at the bank I worked at was actually bullet-resistant. Guy shot at us point blank and it blocked it. If I had known it was a gamble, I probably would have had a heart attack. That most of those 3 people have booked this hotel today, or 4 people are looking at this product right now. Pop-ups on travel agency website and e-commerce sites are lies. Totally static and made up. Yes, and being a dev, I like to test these pop-ups a lot. I open the same link in incognito, and on another computer, and my phone using data instead of the Wi-Fi, and give some time in between visiting those sites. The majority of regular broadcast radio shows are pre-recorded. If a DJ is broadcasting live, usually the morning shows, they still have no control over what music plays. It's all pre-programmed. They'll usually record phone requests and replay them during the voice break before the requested song is scheduled to play anyway, to make it seem like they're taking requests. When the studio is empty, all phone lines are set to busy, so no one calls and realizes there's no one there to answer. Ancillary of this, most of the bits are syndicated, i.e. some hilarious bit where the DJ prank calls someone. The DJ part is re-recorded by your local DJ, but the same caller part is used by many radio stations. Also, this is something that has happened primarily in the last 15 to 20 years. My husband was a full-time on-air personality from 2005 to 2011. Of the 4 main shifts, mornings, midday, afternoon drive, and nights, 3 of them were live when he started, all but middays. By the time they laid him off in 11, only mornings were live. The rest were voice-tracked, pre-recorded, or syndicated. If you buy an antique or a vintage piece, it most likely went through approximately 5 hands, each one at least doubling the price. Ha! Yup. I never buy antiques that are sold as antiques. You want to buy the antiques that are sold as junk or true barn finds. If the seller calls it an antique, they know too much. At the airlines, we generally have no idea where your bag is at any given time. It follows a chain of events to get to the right place. If it ends up missing, no one is looking for your bag. Your file gets loaded in a computer, and when your bag is eventually scanned somewhere, a person is notified to grab it before it moves on to somewhere else. This also means, if you jump to an earlier flight, there is a strong chance that your bag is going to fly on the original flight. The time is usually too little to go find it, retag it and get it to a new flight. If you jump to another airline and we have already retagged it, handed it off to a different airline, it is done. We are not going to be able to retrieve it. It is flying on that flight. Just because your bag tag shows CLT on it does not mean it was accidentally sent there. We often send bags through multiple cities as it will reunite you in your bag hours faster than the next direct flight. Sometimes, we even send it on other airlines that you never even flew on. We may even send it the other way around the globe. LAX to DXB, Dubai. You may have flown through London on British Airways, but the fastest way for me to send your bag may be through Seoul, South Korea on Delta and Korean Air. We try our best, but it's a question of volume, staffing, time, and technology. Honestly, those 4 words, "we try our best," is enough to absolve you of all sin from me. I'm too dumb to know when people are trying hard and when people are slacking off, so I just have to assume it's the former. And it's nice to know at least sometimes I'm not getting clowned on. Wash your fruits and vegetables. If a box breaks open and produce falls out, we rebox it and ship it. It's grown in dirt. Classical musician, lots of us at your local symphony are drugged up on beta blockers when we perform. Propranolol, aka perform-it-all. That stuff is flat out incredible. It's widely used in any sort of TV, radio, interview setting as well. And I've used it for job interviews and big presentations. It completely cuts out that tightening in your chest, the shortness of breath, the rush of blood pressure, etc. that can come on in high-pressure situations. You know that feeling where you can breathe in deeply, but it never quite feels like you can completely exhale. It pretty much eliminates that. Musician and teacher can confirm. I don't use them, but I know lots of people who do. I tell my kids all the time that the only difference between their performance anxiety and mine is that I've learned to hide it. I still get nervous playing for people after 25 years of performing. Yep, I've used them for public speaking too. Removes the fight or flight shaky feeling. Why? This has gotta be a thing with mostly classical musicians. I've always worked more in jazz and pop music, and no one uses beta blockers. Plenty of booze, weed, and a lot of other stuff of course. But also I think it may have something to do with the music itself. In more improvised music, the idea of performing perfectly is a lot more broad. Classical music feels like walking a tightrope. Teacher here. I learned early on in the game that there are a lot of supplies we don't have to pay for if we just know where to look and how to ask nicely. Want to have a lesson about plants? Go to a grocery store florist a few days ahead and ask if they can set aside their dying flowers for your class. Need cardboard? Ask a store for their old boxes. I've even heard of my colleagues just going to stores and asking for donations and explaining why, and getting new stuff for free. It's amazing how much people are willing to go out of their way to help educate kids. I'm not sure if you realize how unintentionally depressing this is. Your secret boils down to, if you scavenge on your own time enough, you can afford to educate kids instead of paying out of your own pocket just to do your job. I see the bright side too, that people are willing to help. But it's nuts that you have to go find that help. It's amazing how much people are willing to go out of their way to help educate kids. Unless you're with the Department of Ed, it seems. Vet worker here. Probably doesn't count as secret, but we absolutely do pet your cats and dogs a lot when you bring them in. I once overheard my dog's cardiologist telling him she'd carry him to the back like the prince you are, instead of him walking on his leash, when she was taking him back for a scan. I loved that vet. I like this. My dog's vet spends at least half the visit petting him and giving him treats. She's the best. I work in an animal ICU, and adding on to this, we absolutely get attached to our patients. I spent 30 minutes I did not have to spare, telling a kitty he was super handsome and hand-feeding him one bite of food at a time because he didn't get to go home until he was eating, and turns out he was a social eater. He also only liked one type of food, and it had to be heated up. Yes, I tried everything in the hospital. They had placed a knee tube that day because it had been so long since he ate. He stayed another 2 days, and I cried tears of joy when he got to go home. Also, if the patient dies, we're absolutely heartbroken and cry in the bathroom afterward and beat ourselves up for days wondering if there was something we missed. We love your critters as our own. Believe me, vet nurses don't get paid enough to be in it for the money. Do some research before buying paint. Most companies do something called cross-pouring, where one of their more expensive paints is the exact same paint as one of their cheapest. One company, let's call them Durban Shilliams, sells 2 products, Super Paint and A100. They are the exact same paint. The cost difference is about $20 per gallon. When temperamental artists ask us to adjust the sound and we pretend to twiddle knobs. 25 years as both performer and tech. I have seen both the best and worst of both sides. The best was an internationally renowned jazz artist with an incredibly exacting tech writer. He would not enter the venue until his road manager reviewed every piece. The tech director was totally chill about it, and told me he and his fans have certain expectations, and our job is to meet them. When sound check started, the artist was incredibly gracious, thoughtful, respectful, and exacting, an absolute delight in every way. And we didn't stop until it was perfect. Some artists are temperamental pricks, and some engineers are condescending douchebags. I have had my fill of both. The true pros work together to create a great experience. Can confirm this is true. I've adjusted the DFA knob lots of times. Does F*** all. I work at a fabrication shop, and the number of times something isn't to spec and still gets sent out is unbelievable. That's a shitty fab shop. In my experience, some of the pieces I make where I work have to be pretty damn perfect before they can go out to a customer. Although we are making pieces for Gov and some other picky people, maybe it's different elsewhere. There's a little Asian 19-year-old in that Mickey outfit. Knew a guy that worked at WDW about 7 to 8 years ago. He said Tinkerbell was a short Asian man. This isn't a secret, but everything is photoshopped. I am constantly pointing out to people a bad Photoshop job in an ad. And people will say, "What are you talking about? Looks real to me." Trust me, everything is photoshopped. Put through a filter, shrunken, stretched, brightened, just to make you want to buy it. I photograph and retouch fine jewelry lol. The rings are beautiful IRL, but the macro lens picks up every tiny detail that you would never see with your own eyes. So I basically give diamonds a makeover, plus changing all the colors so the golds all look uniform on the website. It's so tedious. Former profession. Catholic school principal. Open secret. Private schools lower their costs and increase their test scores by expelling students with special needs or low grades. Anyone with a disability costs extra because you have to spend more on support services. And private schools like to brag about being academically better than public ones, instead of helping vulnerable kids. Many such schools abandon them for better optics and more money. Current profession. Tabletop RPG designer. Open secret. The pay is crap. You cannot make a living this way unless you are extremely lucky. I have a day job and very understanding wife. What's worse is how some game companies purposefully target folks wanting to break into game design by offering them work at super low rates. 3 cents per word is common, but still low. But I've seen asshats offering $0.005 per word. Yes, half a cent. Or the scam where there's no pay because you'll receive exposure. I can fix most people's computer issues by doing 3 things, then doing a few reboots. I teach this to family. The startup items are in Task Manager as of Windows 8. You should really upgrade from 7 if you haven't already. Nurse Manager here. We nurses aren't saints. Generally, most of us are caring, hardworking people, but we have the same people problems as the general population. Opioid addiction, affairs with married men, duos, time card fraud, the list goes on. Was a cop, always in the and let me tell you, if there was a prick in there pissing them all off, they got the biggest garden hose of a Foley catheter they could find if he needed one. Never piss off someone who might have to jam a tube in your pee hole. We are rejoicing in the visiting restrictions right now, even though we'll smile and say that a family member coming out every 5 minutes isn't a bother. It's a guarantee that we're getting pissed off at the second time. Insurance rep here. Your credit score matters more than people realize. It can affect your auto insurance premium by as much as $100 a month. And if you're a renter, I can pretty much ballpark your credit score by running a renter's insurance quote for you. The higher the monthly premium for your renter's insurance, the shittier your credit score. What about your zip code? How much does that affect your rates, and what's that based on? Crime rates, thefts in your area? It is not difficult to get super realistic details in CGI. I see people look at stuff like the stitching on shirts and how there's some fuzz on a peach or something like that in animated films. It looks impressive. But those details are super easy to make. Just slap on a normal map and a particle system. Of course, some details like cobwebs are more complicated, but overall the tiny little things are just a texture or particle system. The actual hard stuff goes completely unrecognized if it's done well. Compliment the character rigging every now and then. It's much more difficult. Single quote. I think the new Lion King was a good example. The fur, all the small details were breathtaking. But then Simba looks fucking bored as hell when he's clinging to a branch above raging stampede. Advertisers can show you ads that are related to what your wife, husband, girlfriend, etc. has been looking at online. If you have acknowledged your relationship, i.e. marital status on Facebook, and are often in the same location, advertisers assume you're talking about getting a bike or planning a trip, etc. and will serve you ads even if you haven't been the person looking them up. For some reason, medical device prices are inflated beyond the stratosphere against what it costs to make them. I understand there are more regulating organizations that are applicable for medical devices in not other products. Automotive, electrical, petrochemical. But what the fuck? An item that costs us $700 to make is sold to our dealers in $3K. Then they sell those to hospitals in $7K. Then the hospital sells them the client, patient, in $10K. OMG. I had to bring my own soft neck collar to my surgery center for having a disc fused. A little weird, but whatever. I picked it up at the place they recommended and had my successful surgery. Found out after I got my bill that they charged my insurance $3,000. It was $15.99 on Amazon. Teachers do have favorites. In breaking news, water is wet. That just because something is patented doesn't make it any good. Stupid shit is patented every day. Addictions counselor here. A lot of police drink too much. A lot of childcare providers use opiates. Real estate agents do not believe their job is to get you the best price. To agents, there is an unwritten understanding that you have a realistic expectation when buying a property. They can consult you, guide you, and employ some basic negotiating tactics. But they aren't interested in wheeling and dealing at the chance of a paycheck. Even if they make you believe they are hustling hard to find you a diamond deal. If you start to become unrealistic, many agents will just start to frame everything as a great deal and once in a lifetime to get you to buy, to avoid having wasted their time. Going to the hospital by ambulance doesn't mean you'll see a doctor any quicker. Military grade literally translates into the lowest bidder. A lot of military personnel, especially the Marines, use stuff from the Vietnam War, hand-me-downs from the Army, etc. The government spends as little as possible on outfitting its troops in 99% of cases. Isn't there a quote about that? Never forget your rifle was built by the lowest bidder, or something. Have you seen the movie War Dogs? It's loosely based on two guys who, among other things, won a government supply contract because their quoted price was so far below their competitors. Most people who work in IT support really aren't more tech-savvy than the average user. They just know how to Google. I say the secret to IT is twofold. 1. You have to be able to Google shit and know when you've found something that might be a solution. And 2. You have to be able to undo what you did. Usually this is by way of remember what steps you took, or writing them down, so you can undo them. Those two make a lethal troubleshooting combination. In my case, it's less that I know how to Google and more that I'm willing to Google. That's what I was gonna say. We don't actually know most of the stuff. We're just really good at finding the answers and being able to follow the instructions to fix it. This plus admin privileges. 90% of my phone calls, emails to my IT folks are because they do not give us Joe Schmo common Workers' access rights to install, uninstall what I want or even adjust my settings. Construction piss bottles everywhere. Porta potties so bad? Depending on the state, security guards can't actually detain you if they suspect you of a crime. This one comes with a whole bunch of caveats though. I used to be a security guard, where we would rarely detain people, and also used to work loss prevention, where I would regularly, and the amount of people who would, incorrectly, try and tell us what we could and couldn't do was pretty damn high. Every state is different, but generally speaking, someone can do a citizen's arrest if they witness a misdemeanor or suspect a felony. This doesn't count things like merchant protection laws, which can further give leeway. Bartender here, we hate everybody. Bus driver here, we too. And if we drive off without you, we do it intentionally. Gallows humor is how many in 911 call centers and emergency services handle some of the shit we deal with. 7 to 9 a.m. rush was known as people waking up dead. It helped. Yeah, can confirm. A couple friends are EMTs and any suicide they've been to, except the really bad ones, they've joked about the day of or the next day. It's a coping mechanism. I do the same with bad fire scenes. Automotive technician here, and maybe I've been extremely fortunate, but the shop is usually not out to screw you. A lot of the upsells people scream about are the fact that I have to take these parts off to get to the part 1, have to fix, replace. The parts that came off have 100,000 miles on them. Let me save you labor and replace them now instead of 6 months to a year later. The other upsells that cause people to cry foul are usually maintenance recommended by the manufacturer at that interval, and in my personal experience, when someone is getting screwed at a shop, it's because of a service writer or service manager trying to sell unneeded work, not the mechanic. Software developer. A lot of large financial systems are held together with duct tape code and have no real documentation or specifications. Also, there's a good chance that a large number of the staff are fresh out of uni and are just muddling along. I did my student placement at a major insurance software company which handled billions in transactions. At one point, the entire support team was a single student with no oversight. Libraries throw away, pulp or otherwise recycle a lot of old books. We get a lot of awful, tatty stuff donated. We have old, manky books that we need to get rid of to make shelf space for newer stock. And we have standards for anything we sell off at library stock sales. It's just easier to throw things out. Sometimes things go to the workroom for repair or cleaning, straight in the bin. We do this because if customers knew, they might damage things that they wanted to buy from us. Insurance agent here. To all home buyers, make sure you buy some sort of mold coverage. When pipes burst or you have a leaky faucet or some sort of water damage, we'll write it off as non-covered mold. Save yourself an extra hassle and get some limited mold coverage. Heed my warning. Edit. Also, when we stress saying in the event of a covered loss, it really means it's a 50-50 chance of it depending on how claim adjusters see it. Almost every elderly person living in a retirement home wants to die. There's a grace period if the person is relatively healthy, but as soon as they realize they are destined to live in the same room the rest of their life, they are quick to ask everyone around them to kill them.